Season 5, episode 61 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Lidskin. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am just wonderful, Sam. It is, officially the part of the season where the casuals join us, or at
Yeah.
least all of them that have not already joined us. So, no, nothing better than, all the football and NBA fans figuring out what college basketball is this time of year. But
They remember for a month.
yeah,
and it's a great month. I will say, it's a good thing they choose this month and not like December into January. This is a better month of college basketball.
mm-hmm. Yeah, this is unarguably the time of the year when college basketball is at its peak. You have this final stretch of conference play where you just get banger after banger of a matchup with conference races coming down to the wire. Then you have conference tournaments, champ weeks technically, which is awesome. You have so many teams fighting for their bubble lives, fighting to make the NCAA tournament. There are teams that inevitably make history. And then, of course, we get the big stage, March Madness.
Jonathan, we are less than 3 weeks away from my daily slate maps.
I love those every year.
Every year. I love them too.
And we are awfully close as well to,
the 3 weeks before Selection Sunday.
Yeah, we started to, we obviously have that stat that you and I will talk about, how many national champions lose in the weeks leading up to Selection Sunday. And also,
well, it got a little ruined last year.
Yeah, no, when you have a team like UConn that's just a complete, Mack truck that's driving through everyone, that's kind of what you get. But it's still a discussion, in my opinion, as are the bracket Bible rules that we will be reciting.
Yes, Jonathan. So we have, if you guys don't know, our show schedule is pretty erratic during the weeks, but we love, we do try to do, we haven't been able to do any Saturday night shows this year.
It's been tough. You've been at games. I've been working.
I have a 6 o'clock game next week, which I think will work for a show. But overall, we try to do at least 2 shows during the week. And then we try on the weekends. We have not been good about getting shows on the weekends. Our weekday shows, we usually do Tuesdays and either Thursday or Friday. Thursday is always a mid-major show. We've had Nick Lawrenson come on for that this year. He will join us this Thursday again, and we're going to do a big mailbag on that stuff. So if you want updates on mid-major stuff, listen to the last episode that was on Thursday. And then as conference tournament,
hey, those days are important because you people who are joining us for this final stretch where March Madness is really the only thing that matters to you guys. Thursday is when we talk about the teams that could potentially be your Cinderellas, because so many mid-major leagues play their games on Thursday.
Yeah, because I mean, you can get the better refs, I guess. It's good for the travel schedule.
I think travel schedule is the most important thing because a lot of these leagues are more local.
Yeah,
don't have the huge travel budget.
We'll get into plenty of that stuff. We will talk about a couple of mid majors having terrific seasons right now, and some names that you need to know from the mid major level of guys that could be the Jack Golkes, the capture your heart Max A. Smith type players this year. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that later in the show. We also try to do Friday preview shows for all the weekend stuff. Those are always fun because it gives kind of an insight into what we're looking for when we're predicting a game, and just how we analyze a given game before it happens. And that is all we do the week of, well, it's not all we do, but it's all that a lot of people do that week of NCAA tournament time. And then once conference tournaments come around, schedule becomes weird because I'm obviously at the entire MAC tournament, Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference in Atlantic City, Jonathan will be busy doing a lot of things as well.
Yeah,
But
I'm currently working on confirming. I'll have more of a clear answer tomorrow, probably. If I'm headed to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament. Sadly, no Missouri Valley tournament for me this year, which I'm very upset about.
brutal.
But I guarantee, I can almost promise you that I will be watching every single game from that tournament and hopefully live tweeting.
I'm so excited for you better be live tweeting that. That's your Super Bowl.
Yeah,
You don't tweet the Valley enough. Like
I really don't. I like retweet. Well, I will make sure I retweet all the games that go on.
You
But
should
like
ask
I watch it and like I just don't give enough analysis of it. And like we have the Valley update on here where I get to, but I really do not tweet enough about the conference.
Yeah, and then once we have our bracket, Sunday night we go over the entire bracket Bible, and that's like the big deal for us. We go over Jonathan's bracket Bible and we look at potential matchups that go with the bracket Bible on the bracket. We don't fill out our brackets on the first night. We look at our initial thoughts, but we don't fill it out. Monday night is more for the sickos. That is when we bring on Curry Hicks Sage, the pioneer of search season, to talk all about coaching changes. If you're a casual college basketball fan just tuning in for the first time, you're probably not going to listen to that episode. And then you will definitely listen on Wednesday when we go over our full bracket picks. So that is a month away, Jonathan.
Yeah, we are.
But what are the storylines Jonathan, what is the number one storyline for you in college basketball this season?
So that's an interesting question because, I think what the number one storyline to me is not actually, the number one storyline to most people watching college basketball. I think the biggest storyline in college basketball this season that, most people have been talking about is the National Player of the Year race. And that's Cooper Flagg. It's Janai Broome of Auburn. Cooper Flagg obviously being the sensational freshman for Duke. Those two have kind of gone back and forth with debates between National Player of the Year all season. You had Cooper Flagg, who kind of skyrocketed in the odds on books to like minus 800 or something like that when Janai Broome went down with an injury. But Broome has slowly worked his way back into the picture since coming back from injury. Flagg is a sensational freshman. He has supreme athleticism. His shot has improved as the season has gone on. He makes a major impact on the defensive end. And he really has a complete skill set that's evolved as the season goes on. As a reclass, by the way, he should still be in high school, I may add. And then you have Janai Broome, who has really taken a huge leap in his second year at Auburn. He was a transfer from Third?
Yep.
Damn, you're right. That's crazy. So, he really took a leap last year, then I should say, as a second-year transfer, and has taken even more of a leap as a third-year transfer. He started his college career at Morehead State, transferred to Auburn. Bruce Pearl has absolutely maximized his skill set with what they run, what they do offensively, and he is another one of those guys that has become sort of a complete player as Bigs continue to dominate college basketball from a year-to-year basis in terms of the National Player of the Year race. He's a guy that is really good inside, as a really dominant left hand. He rebounds. He protects the rim. He's become a really good passer this year. I think that's something that has changed about his game and how his game has evolved. So he's like, and I think the other thing I should add is that he's really developed his 3-point shot.
And he's arguably the best defensive player in college basketball.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's also arguably not even the best defensive player in his front court.
Yeah, no, Auburn has, and I think that's the other kind of storyline is those two players have gone with the best two teams this year. You have Auburn and Duke, who are both sitting at very high net ratings on KenPom. Neither above 36 after their losses yesterday. But teams losing this sport, you'll find that out if you're joining us in February. Good teams lose. So I think that's probably the second biggest storyline is how many really good teams there are this year. You have Auburn and Duke being the top two. Then you have Houston, who analytics always love them, but they're having another special year. Tennessee has been really good this year. Florida got a big win at Auburn yesterday in Todd Golden's third season. Alabama, it continues to stack really good wins, even though the metrics might not like them quite as much as some of the teams above them. you just have so many compelling teams this year in college basketball. I think that's another big storyline is just how great the sport has been as a whole this year. You know, Sam, we mentioned it a couple weeks ago that like in terms of net rating this year, like the 28th team on KenPom is higher than like the 18th ranked team from last year.
Yeah, there are 30 teams above a 20 net rating on KenPom this year. There were 18 last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really impressive. The next thing, the thing that I'm going to point to as a big storyline is kind of a double barrel storyline. It starts as the two-time reigning national champions, the UConn Huskies, are not having an excellent season. They're very good. They will be a threat. They will make the NCAA tournament. They will have upside to go far in the NCAA tournament, but they are not at the moment or really even close to being a threat for a third straight national title. And that was after an extremely high-profile offseason for Dan Hurley, where he turned down the Los Angeles Lakers head coaching job to chase this three-peat. Now, when you lose 4 starters to the NBA, it's going to be really hard.
For the second year in a row.
Yeah. But Dan Hurley had proven that he'd been able to do it in the past. And then they go to Maui for the Maui Invitational in Hawaii, the third week of the season, and they lost all 3 games. And Hurley has kind of been drawn the ire of college basketball fans and media for his antics towards officials and the words he's been throwing out in press conferences towards officials throughout the season, as UConn has struggled a little bit more. They're 16-7, 8-4 in the Big East. Remember, last season UConn was 37-3, 18-2 in the Big East. One of the all-time great seasons in college basketball over the last 25 plus years. And this team is just not quite as dominant. They were without Liam McNeely, their best player, their star freshman, for over a month, for just about a month, the entire month of January. And they lost 3 games, including 2 tight ones on the road. Alex Caravan has not been very good recently. He's in a bit of a slump. And just in terms of guard play, there's just not enough there in terms of creators. Hassan Diarra has taken a step forward, but he's still not an excellent scorer. And I mean, solo ball has been awesome. He's been tremendous. And then in terms of down low, they've struggled with fouling. And then the double barrel part of the storyline this year with them is their most recent game was at home, and it was a loss to St. John's. St. John's is 21-3, 12-1 in the Big East, led by head coach Rick Pitino in his second season, right after the Johnnies should have made the NCAA tournament last year, but missed it by more than they should have, actually, because it was a very tough year to be on the bubble because of how many bid stealers there were.
Mm-hmm.
But St. John's went 20-13 in Pitino's first season, and now they've taken that patented second-year jump under Rick Pitino. A bunch of guys are back. RJ Lewis has taken a huge step forward. He's one of the best players in the Big East. He's getting a lot of Big East Player of the Year shouts. I think it's tough to unseat Cam Jones or Eric Dixon for that, but Lewis is right in the conversation. Kadari Richmond comes over from rival Seton Hall. He struggled early in the season, but he has really picked it up. He had a huge game against Marquette in the Garden last week. He was awesome. And then there's Zuby Ejiofor, who has been tremendous all year for St. John's. Just a huge story of player development there on Rick Pitino with Lewis and Ejiofor. Simeon Wilcher has been very good at times too this year. He's also been very difficult at times this year. So I think maybe Wilcher has a lot of the ceiling for St. John's is in how well Wilcher can play down the stretch of the season. He had 11 points against UConn, had a couple of big shots. He maybe hasn't developed as much as they wanted him to, but it hasn't mattered. He's been good at times, and that's been good enough because they're 21-3. They are on the nation's second longest active winning streak at 10 games. They just won at home against Marquette and then at UConn. This is Rick Pitino, guys. This is one of the greatest coaches in the history of our sport. He is one of the most colorful personalities in our sport. I've sat in about a dozen plus, maybe like 20 Rick Pitino press conferences in my time, and he's not going to hold back. Like he says he says a lot of shit in those press conferences. He's one of the most entertaining people in college basketball. And I think it's very good for the sport that he has not just a winning team that's relevant, but a winning team at St. John's in New York City, in Madison Square Garden. They just moved the March 1st game against Seton Hall into the Garden. Seton Hall is 6-16.
Sam, I'll be right back.
Seton Hall is 6-18. They're 1-12 in the Big East, and they just moved that game into the Garden because of how good St. John's has been. And when you can get college basketball on center stage in Madison Square Garden, all of that going, you know that this is serious. And I think Rick Pitino, for me, at this moment, Rick Pitino is the National Coach of the Year. I've been teetering on the edge with this a couple times. Pat Kelsey at Louisville is doing a tremendous job. Bruce Pearl at Auburn is in the conversation as well, and John Shire at Duke. But for me, number one is Rick Pitino, and it's because when I watch St. John's play, I think that play by play, there is no team more locked in, more cohesive to what their identity is as a unit in the entire sport. No team more locked into what they need to do to win. So not to what basketball dictates you need to do to win, but to what they need to do to win. Nobody is more of that than St. John's right now. The Johnnies are, to put it lightly, a bad outside shooting team. They are non-conformative to the modern structure of college basketball. And that's crazy because Rick Pitino was one of the earliest adopters in college basketball of the three-point shot. If you go all the way back to some of his teams at Kentucky, you will notice that he had some really good three-point shooting teams. And that was what led him partially, obviously, the press, the NBA athletes. He had 9 NBA players on the 96 team, which is arguably the greatest team of the last 45, 50 years of college basketball. It's in the conversation. But he was a very early adopter of the three-point shot in college basketball. But this year, he built a team that's gone away from that. And it works because they are so athletic. They are so tough. They are so long defensively. They start a 6'6" point guard in Kadari Richmond, who's one of the best on-ball defenders in the Big East. And then, but their big guy, their starting big, Zuby Ejiofor, is only 6'9", but he is one of the toughest players in college basketball. He's an excellent rebounder. He blocks shots, and he can move. The St. John's team is built to travel defensively. Last year, the last couple weeks of the season, St. John's was scoring like crazy. They ended up finishing on the top 20 offense in the country after Rick Pitino kind of bemoaned his entire team for being slow laterally and just bad defensively. They turned it up offensively and finished with a top 20 offense, finished just outside of the NCAA tournament. Then goes into the transfer portal, builds a different roster, buys in, as the guys buy in to what he's building with this roster. And Rick Pitino, at the moment, for me, is the National Coach of the Year. And those are the two Big East storylines that I think are some of the defining storylines in college basketball this year. Jonathan, I'll send it right back over to you. Give me another one.
Who just got back from taking my dog out. I think This is good. I think another big storyline this year is Purdue, and more specifically Braden Smith. I think that people kind of had this expectation that Braden Smith wasn't going to be as good without Zach Edey, which wasn't like super unreasonable, but people pushed it to the limit of he's going to be straight bad. And he has been far from it. He's arguably been the best point guard. It's honestly not even really arguable. He has been the best point guard in the country this year. His assist numbers are through the roof. People kind of have figured it out, like as the weeks have gone on, that he is putting himself in a position to break the all-time assist record set by Bobby Hurley. And because of him and because of Trey Kaufman-Renn, as well as, some key role pieces for this team, they are in position to win the Big Ten for what is the third straight year. Matt Painter is doing another incredible coaching job. They have some freshmen that are really standing out for them. CJ Cox specifically. Purdue has been another really good story this year, and has really shown the college basketball world that they are among the elite when it comes to most consistent programs.
All right, Jonathan. In my opinion, the next big storyline in college basketball is the SEC's pursuit of 12 or 13 bids in the NCAA tournament. I don't have the numbers pulled up, but the SEC had an all-time great run in non-conference play. Mm-hmm. Basically, every team in that league was winning against power conference opponents, winning by some of them were winning by good margins. The SEC won the SEC ACC Challenge 14-2, or was it 15-1?
It was 14-2. It was Duke and Clemson got the 2 wins for the ACC.
Yeah, Duke and Clemson. Duke beat Auburn at Duke, and Clemson beat Kentucky at Clemson. And there was a time where we were wondering if those were the two best teams in the SEC. There was a time early in the season where we were really, really high as a collective unit of college basketball people on Kentucky. But Kentucky, who is still a good team, has fallen back to 5-5 in the SEC because they're not very good at defense. And the fact of the matter is the SEC can punish you for that. There are so many excellent teams in the SEC. We've mentioned Auburn. We've mentioned Florida. I feel like Florida maybe isn't as big of a national story as they should be. This is a program that they haven't been this good since Billy Donovan was the coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, there's been one coach in between Todd Golden and Billy Donovan, and it was Mike White, and he did technically have a top 5 team in KenPom. They were a 4 seed. But this is a Florida program that I feel like we haven't talked about being as good as they are. This is a Florida team that I feel like maybe we're taking for granted how good they are. This would be a number 1 caliber team in a lot of other years. Mm-hmm. But it's such a great year for college basketball. And then there's Tennessee. Chaz Lanier has stepped into the Dalton Connector role and been very good. He is not Dalton Connect, and we have discussed this at length. We have discussed this at length on the podcast. I think go back 2 weeks ago. I don't know. If you have Apple Podcasts, you can search the transcripts of each podcast. Go search Half Court Chaz. And we were talking a lot about efficiency in the half court, scoring at the rim. He's not at that level with Connect, but he has been an unreal shooter. He's shooting 42% from beyond the arc on crazy high volume. Tennessee has been excellent. They just picked up a big road win at Oklahoma, who's one of the worst teams in the SEC. They're 3-7, but Oklahoma a couple months ago was 13-0. That kind of shows you Oklahoma won the battle for Atlantis. They have wins over Louisville, Michigan, and Arizona, 3 teams that are going to make the NCAA tournament and that are going to wear white jerseys in the NCAA tournament, most likely. Louisville might not. They did lose to Georgia Tech last week. But Louisville is also 18-6, and we'll get into the ACC, probably next. I think Jonathan's going to end up going there next.
Yeah.
But then there's Texas A&M, who's kind of broken through and figured it out, gotten to a new level defensively this year. They're 15th in Ken Palm. They were 35th last couple of years. Chris Beard has another elite defense at Mississippi after struggling last year. Missouri, we've talked at length about the Tigers' outside shooting on this podcast and the latest happenings with Caleb Grill. Mississippi State has been great. Vanderbilt has home wins against Kentucky and Tennessee. That's really impressive for that program in year one under Mark Byington, who was the former coach at James Madison. And then Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Arkansas are all kind of on the bubble. Oklahoma a little less so than the other three. Arkansas, kind of a storyline within itself, as John Calipari has struggled in year one at Arkansas. Boogie Fland is out for the season. The Razorbacks were 0-5 in SEC play, but picked up a big win at Rupp Arena last Saturday in Cal's return. And it kind of turned a lot of people to the fact that, hey, Arkansas's season is not dead. They are right there on the bubble. I actually had them as the last team in my last bracket projection, which I didn't post. I have not posted a bracket projection yet. I will be posting them probably starting this week. But that's another storyline. The only two teams in the SEC that don't have a chance to make the tournament are LSU and South Carolina.
Yeah, I want to move to the ACC, like you said. Couple different reasons for this, though. First of all, the ACC obviously being, I don't even know if you can call it really disappointing, because I don't think people expected the ACC to be good first place. But the fact that they're on track to have, like, at most 4 tournament teams is concerning in an 18-team league. You have Duke, obviously, who's one of the nationally dominant teams. You have Clemson, who just picked up the big win over Duke this weekend and who I think is particularly good. And you have Louisville, who is quite the nice story. Pat Kelsey, first-year coach. They obviously suffered through the really bad Kenny Payne years where they were historically bad Louisville teams. And Pat Kelsey comes in with his great fast-paced style and shooting a ton of threes and all these new players. And Louisville has just kind of flipped it. They are 18-6 overall. They are 11-2 in the conference, a game back of Duke, tied with Clemson for second place. But outside of those three, Wake Forest hasn't been quite as good as some people expected. SMU has just kind of been okay. They were thought to be maybe a sleeper in the league. North Carolina has just had a disastrous year, and people continue to talk about Hubert Davis losing his job with every passing week, it feels like. Other than that, Pitt started hot and then kind of just fell off from there. And then I think the other main storyline in this league is how many coach openings there's going to be. You already have Virginia, which opened the week before the season started with Tony Bennett retiring abruptly, citing NIL and how the sport changed. You had Jim Larinaga, who his team was just not showing a lot of effort, to be frank, when he was the coach at the start.
They've shown even less since.
Yeah. He called it quits mid-season. Miami, it feels like, has called it quits on this season.
5-18. 2 years ago, Miami was in the Final Four. Right now, they're 5-18.
So yeah, you have Virginia, Miami, and then you have Florida State, which recently announced that it's not open right now, but it's going to be. Leonard Hamilton, there's been speculation about his retirement for the past couple of years. There's been speculation about who is going to get that job when he retires for the past couple of years. Well, now we'll finally get to see it play out in the offseason. It's Leonard Hamilton is done with coaching. Obviously, he had a great run in the 2010s at Florida State, specifically the late 2010s. Florida State won an ACC regular season title. They were in the second weekend a couple different times. He had a really nice run there. And again, college basketball losing another great coach.
Specifically, the ACC losing another one from that tree of those late 2010s coaches that were
that made the league so great.
Yeah, we've already before this year, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, when Buzz Williams was at Virginia Tech, he was I mean, obviously, different level from Roy and Kay, but worth mentioning that I do think Virginia Tech downgraded when they went from him to Mike Young.
You had Mike Bray.
Mike Bray, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Jim Boeheim, obviously.
He's now coaching at Arkansas, of course.
Yes. Jim Boeheim, obviously, another terrific legacy that he left behind. And then this year with Tony Bennett, Jim Larinaga, and
Leonard Hamilton. So you have those three, and then you also have Earl Grant at Boston College, I'd say, is on the hot seat. You have Steve Forbes at Wake. I don't know if he'll get fired, but like his name has been in discussion, obviously. You have Mike Young at Virginia Tech. You have, I don't think Jeff Capel's getting fired either, but his name has been in discussions. I already mentioned Hubert Davis. And then, like, it's not likely, but, you and I have had our discussions, about Adrian Autry and the year that Syracuse is having on this show. So, yeah, it's probably expected that 5 jobs in the ACC are at least they're going to open. I'd say it probably is as high as 6 or 7.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's kind of a big storyline, I would say, in college basketball. Are there any other huge storylines that we're missing? Rutgers just not being. Rutgers has 2 players that will probably be top 5 picks in the NBA draft, in Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, and the Scarlet Knights will not make the NCAA tournament. Rutgers coach Steve Pikiell is a good coach. He has made multiple NCAA tournaments. He would have made the NCAA tournament in 2020, and he would have made it in 2023 had his top glue guy not gotten hurt. So he would have made 4 NCAA tournaments in a row at a place that hadn't made an NCAA tournament in a very, very, very long time before he got there. He brings in 2 of the top 3 recruits in the sport, and his team is 12-12. I don't know what else to add to that. We've discussed that at length on the podcast as well. Go back and search through our episodes to hear kind of our thoughts. That was a lot of a very early January-ish storyline. If you go back and look at those, because I went to a couple Rutgers games this year, and you can definitely see some of that. And I'll be at another one, probably last day of the season against Minnesota, unless Army or Lafayette or Lehigh host a Patriot League semi. Lehigh will not. They are like 3-7, but.
I'd say there's a couple other mini storylines real quick before we move on that I want to mention. There's been some weird, like, I wouldn't call it turmoil, but just like weird pathways with some traditional blue bloods, Kansas and Kentucky. Kansas has had their ups and downs this year. They have lost to Mizzou, lost to Kansas State. It's the first time, I think, since 82-83 that Kansas in a season lost to both Mizzou and Kansas State. Kansas is 7-5 in the conference for the second straight year. They are not going to be close to winning a Big 12 conference that they have dominated historically under Big South. Kentucky had a tremendous start to the season. Fans were head over heels for Mark Pope, and it has now come kind of, I wouldn't say crashing down to earth, but regression to the mean has certainly hit the Cats. They are now 16-7. They've lost 4 of 6, including a game at home to John Calipari, obviously the former Kentucky coach. And then for the second straight year, Gonzaga is in position to not win the WCC, which is mind-blowing based on, the last decade plus of Gonzaga.
And then Indiana, who is 14-10, 5-8 in the Big Ten, is in position for the second straight year to miss the NCAA tournament and miss the NCAA tournament quite handily. This is year 4 of Mike Woodson, and it was just announced this weekend that it will be the last year of Mike Woodson at Indiana. And that is a job that we will be discussing intently with Curry Sage on search season. It is probably, unless Hubert Davis gets fired at North Carolina, the job that will be the most coveted this offseason. Would you agree?
Yes.
Unless Rick Barnes retires at Tennessee, maybe.
Yeah, it's.
I think in this era, Tennessee and Indiana are kind of similar level jobs.
What's so interesting is you mentioned a bunch about the SEC, and I think people have not truly grasped yet how much. How do I say this? How valuable and how high coaches hold these SEC jobs now. Like these are not like Tennessee and Arkansas. Arkansas's got some success historically. It's not a great example, but like Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, these are not historically great jobs. And I think coaches probably hold them
I think Tennessee is
pretty high regard. Maybe, but like these like you wouldn't consider those kind of schools to be the second tier to blue bloods in terms of like how high coaches hold those jobs, and now they kind of are.
Oh yeah, completely.
By the way, something I just realized: the last let me figure this out. You have UConn, Kansas, Baylor, Virginia, Villanova, and UNC. So the last 6 national champions in KenPom are 11, 26. Virginia is 102. Villanova is 51, and
UConn's 36.
So yeah, the last the most recent national champions not doing super hot.
We are probably going to have a team win the national championship for the first time in at least a decade, if not significantly longer or ever. As in Auburn has never won a national championship. Alabama has never won a national championship. Tennessee has never won a national championship. Duke won the last.
Tennessee has never made a Final Four, I believe.
That is correct. All right, Jonathan. Who are the best couple teams in the country that people need? We've kind of already gotten into this, but a little bit deeper into what makes your national championship tier at the moment.
So we'll start obviously with Auburn and Duke. Those have been 2 of the dominant teams this year, probably the 2 most dominant teams unanimously this year. Auburn is sitting at 21.
By the way, for me, the national championship tier is 5, maybe 6.
Auburn, Duke, Houston is in that tier. Just the super dominant defense. Offense has come along as the year has gone on. I probably won't pick them, but Florida has to be in the national championship tier.
Yes,
agreed. At this point, they have really good guard play. They're big rebound. They're well coached. They run good stuff. Florida has had a tremendous year. Alabama is in my national championship tier.
Yep.
That's 5, and then I'll keep it at 6. Iowa State is still in my national championship tier. Had a little bit of a rough stretch, losing three straight. The Kansas State loss was really bad. The way they lost to Kansas was really bad. But I think having Milan Momcilovic back changes the ceiling of that team. He's such a tremendous floor spacer and has pretty good length. So I think Iowa State is still in the tier for me, but would like to see them obviously play more consistently down the stretch here and just, improve the offense as the season kind of comes down to the wire.
I mean, they are 18th in offense, and they did that a lot with Milan out. So, yeah, Iowa State, and then maybe Tennessee could be.
Yeah, I think Purdue's got a better chance than Tennessee does.
We've had our discussions about Tennessee, and honestly, I don't want to say it because I don't think they can do it. But Arizona's been playing at that level for
Arizona has been. It's weird because talking to my brother, who's obviously a manager there, he said it's great to see. This is his first year as a manager, but he's been at the school for 3 years already. This is his 3rd year, I should say, and he's just talked to me so much about how it's great to see the team become more connected and improve as the year goes on. Tommy Lloyd's teams at Arizona. You've seen them be one of the most like coherent and well put together teams from the get go in college basketball seasons individually. But this Arizona team, it really felt like they took some time to gel, but they have it completely rolling right now.
Arizona is right now 10th in KenPom. They are 6th in Torvik since December 15th. In that stretch, they are 13-1. After that 4-5 start, when we were wondering if they were going to make the NCAA tournament, Jonathan.
Yeah, they were 4-5 to start the season.
Yeah, we've talked about Auburn. We've talked about Duke. But a little more color on Houston, because the Cougars are just as you've expected them, just as you've come to expect from them defensively. But now they're shooting 40% from three. They're the number 7 3-point shooting team in college basketball, because Milo Suzanne, Emmanuel Sharp, and LJ Cryer are all shooting 40% from deep, which is really impressive. It's not a team that shoots a ton of threes, but their guards are good enough outside shooters to the point where you really have to worry about them.
Yeah, no, I think Houston thing this season was they were kind of in search of that signature win, and they got it finally on January 25th when they went to Allen Fieldhouse and beat Kansas. They are, I think, a much more, I would stop short at calling this the best Houston team that Kelvin Sampson has. I think that team
ago.
I think that team that lost to Miami in the Sweet 16, that team healthy was just tremendous. And, you didn't always see it because they played such a weak schedule compared to other national championship contenders in the American. But now that they're in the Big 12, you kind of see it with them consistently competing like this on a week in and week out basis. But Houston, you lose to Auburn, you lose to Alabama, you lose to San Diego State, all kind of on neutrals to start the season. And your Big 12 schedule is really easy for the first, kind of month of conference play. But then they go to Kansas, they get that win. And now they have a really tough schedule coming down the stretch here. But I think, I don't know if this is the best Houston team that Kelvin Sampson has, but I think they might be the toughest to guard.
All right, Jonathan. Who has been some of the most disappointing teams in the country?
This is tough to measure because, obviously different teams have different expectations. And so, I think Kansas fans would tell you that they're having a disappointing season. But Kansas is also always thought to be a national championship contender. I think Arkansas is still probably up there. I know they've been playing a lot better lately, but this was a team that people had in top 10s, top 15s start the season. And they just, they haven't played like that. North Carolina was a preseason top 10, 15 team coming off a year where they had a 1 seed, and they brought back, a trio of guards as well as a really good freshman class. But not having a big has killed them. Guards being inconsistent has killed them. Let's see who else. Kansas State, not to me, has been disappointing, but I think to a lot of people have been.
I would say North Carolina. The Tar Heels are 14-10. They lost 2 of 3 in Maui. They lost. They got pounded at home by Alabama. They have a home loss in conference play to Stanford. They're 7-5 in a bad ACC. Hubert Davis is going to have his job questioned. His team trailed 40-13 in the first half against Duke. It was never as competitive as the score would indicate. It was a 32-point game in the second half against Duke. They got completely eviscerated. This is a North Carolina team that started the season. We thought their offense was really good. They had a lot of guards that could really score. And now their offense is 45th in the country, and their defense is actually kind of caught up at 51. but that's not where they should be. North Carolina is one of the elite programs in college basketball. And they are in grave danger of missing the NCAA tournament for the second year out of 3.
Yeah, I think, and like you have. So I mentioned Arkansas already, but it's really like the disappointing teams have been the ones that like have spent a lot of money and it just has totally not worked out for them. So Kansas State, Indiana, I think Rutgers has been really disappointing. Like I know that Harper and Bailey have played so few games together this year, but the cast of players that they brought in, I thought was really good, and they just have totally not lived up to the expectations that people placed on them.
I would also say Providence.
Yeah. Providence definitely won.
For you, Syracuse.
Yeah, Syracuse has been a major disappointment to me. I thought this was maybe going to be a second-year leap for Adrian Autry with better roster construction, and it has been the complete opposite. The Orange are just, in a complete slide right now. It feels like
they got a win yesterday in triple overtime against
triple overtime at home against BC. Yeah.
The Syracuse has gone to double overtime against the 214th ranked team in KenPom and triple overtime against the 209th ranked team in KenPom.
I mean, can we say that like NC State coming off a Final Four appearance and being 103rd in KenPom is a disappointment?
Yeah, NC State.
They shouldn't be this bad.
NC State won 9 games in a row to make the NCAA tournament in 5 wins in 5 days, and then go to the Final Four last year. They have 9 wins, and it's February 9th.
Yeah.
So, yes, NC State can absolutely be on the level of among the most disappointing teams in college basketball.
How about Cincinnati? I mean, this is supposed to be the year in which Wes Miller kind of turned it around and elevated Cincinnati to, not a top program in the Big 12 by any means, but a competitive and consistent NCAA tournament team. That's what he was brought in there to do. And Cincinnati is 14-9. Their offense ranks 120th in the country, and Cincinnati is most certainly on the outside looking in today to make the NCAA tournament.
All right, Jonathan, who would you call some of the most surprising teams in the country?
I think.
I would say Florida being this good.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing about Auburn. I think we expected those two teams to be good, but I didn't think either of them would be this good. I didn't think either of them, were in the elite category for among the best teams in the country. I'd also say Texas A&M, with relatively the same group of players that they've had for the last 2 or 3 years, elevating their defense like this and being a top 15 team, potentially a 2 seed.
For me, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I picked. Where did I pick Wisconsin in the Big Ten? 2024-25 off season right here. Where did I pick Wisconsin in the Big Ten? I picked Wisconsin 14th in the Big Ten, and they are 12th in KenPom. They are 19-5, 9-4 in the Big Ten. John Tonje, a transfer from Missouri who didn't play much last year due to injury, was a star at Colorado State before that, was committed to New Mexico. He was going to play for the Lobos this year, and then Wisconsin swooped in and nabbed him. And he has been one of the best players in the Big Ten all year. And John Blackwell has taken a big leap. The Badgers beat Arizona at home early in the season. That kind of really started the craze on Wisconsin. They lost 3 in a row, 3 really tough games: Michigan, Marquette, Illinois. But then they won their next 7, and they got to 15-3, and here they are at 19-5. They have a huge game next Saturday against Purdue at Mackey Arena. It's probably the biggest game of. Oh well, I forgot that. Auburn, Alabama is next Saturday. Next Saturday might be one of the best days of college basketball all season, Jonathan. We've got Auburn, Alabama, Houston, Arizona, Wisconsin, Purdue. Egg Bowl, Boise State, San Diego State, and Boise State.
Michigan State, Illinois was really dramatic the first time they played.
What'd you say?
Michigan State, Illinois was like really controversial and really dramatic.
Very controversial. We haven't talked anything about Illinois yet or Michigan State. I'm gonna go a little into Illinois because I think that's a team people will want to know about. They are one of the most exciting teams in the country because they have Kasparas Jakushonis, a freshman from Lithuania, who is well above his years in terms of just a scoring acumen. But this is a team that has struggled at times with consistency. They are now 8-6 in the Big Ten. They are a super fast-paced team. But they have struggled at times, as I've mentioned. Will Riley is coming into his own, though. And I thought it would take him a year. It has taken him 3 months. Good for him. They also have Tomislav Ivisic, who has had his moments as well this year. They are a really fascinating group at Illinois. Jonathan, what can you say quickly about Michigan State?
Yeah, Michigan State's a team that's kind of done it in an old school way. They don't shoot the three well, nor do they take a ton of threes. But I think the fact that they know their strengths and weaknesses has really helped them this season. They're great at attacking the rim. They're great in transition. They move the ball really well. It's a classic Tom Izzo team. I wouldn't go as far to say they could win a national championship because I don't think they're a good enough shooting team to do that. But they're physical. They play defense. They're a tough out on a night-to-night basis. And I'm not super discouraged by that West Coast trip where they lost two games. I think that's a tough trip for anyone in this league, and I still think Michigan State is a very good team.
All right, Jonathan. Who else would you say have been back to where we were about surprising teams?
Yeah, I have one. You were definitely higher on this team than me preseason, but I was super low on this team. Nebraska loses Casey Tominaga, and Riek Moss goes out for the season with an injury. And we have known that since the offseason. So Nebraska basically returns Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary. They bring in a couple transfers that have been key for them. But this is a team that I thought would be in competition to finish dead last in the Big Ten. And instead, they are having a relatively similar year to what they had last year. Probably closer to the bubble than they were last year, but wouldn't be totally surprised if they finished in that 8-9 seed range, just like they were last year. Fred Hoiberg has done a tremendous job. And then how about West Virginia? I know West Virginia has been trending down.
They were 16-8 and 6-7 last year, and 52nd in Ken Palm. Right now they're 16-8 and 6-7, and they're 39th in Ken Palm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then how about West Virginia, who, if you had told me in the preseason, like, this team was going to be solid, my rankings would reflect that, and I could tell you that I could buy that. But if you told me this team wasn't going to have Tucker DeVries, I would think they would be in like the Colorado-Utah range of the bottom of the barrel in the Big 12. Instead, Javon Small has just had an awesome year. He should be all first-team Big 12. He should be an All-American. And even though West Virginia has been trending in the wrong direction of lately, they play really good defense. And the fact that they're in the NCAA tournament with Tucker DeVries out for the year and him only playing 8 games this year has been just tremendous.
West Virginia, very, very fun story for Darian DeVries in year one. And Tucker is out for the season. He is probably going to be able to get a medical redshirt, though.
Yeah, he only played 8 games, and that's under the requirement, right?
I believe so.
So he should be able to, I would think. I don't know how I haven't mentioned Drake yet, who's like...
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
And then I would like to... throw a hat in there for Creighton. Not that anyone is particularly surprised that they are 18-6, 30th in Ken Palm, but they were in a real bad spot because they lost 3 games early in the season and then lost Pop Isaacs for the season. Then they lost a couple games without Pop Isaacs. And they lost at Georgetown by a lot. And since then, they are 11-1. And they are a threat in the Big East.
Ewing theory.
Pop Isaacs was really good for them. That's the thing.
I don't think he was spectacular, but I don't think he was like.
We wrote their season off to death row when he got hurt, Jonathan.
That's true. That's true. I also think that
we did it on this podcast.
I also think that like you and I kind of said in the preseason that like we think he doesn't take very good shots and he's like the anti-Creighton.
And yet we wrote their season off when he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, more of like, hey, Pop Isaacs is out, and they don't have really anyone else right now that seems to be able to make a damn shot.
Jemiah Neal has turned a corner.
He has. That has been a surprise for sure.
And clearly, we have seen the slide deck.
Yeah,
from Greg McDermott.
You and I were both thinking it.
All right, Jonathan. Give me some Cinderellas. Who could be? I hate the word Cinderella. I hate it. But this is a podcast for the casual college basketball fan who only tunes in really for the last month or so of the season. So I'll humor that itch.
Why do you hate the word Cinderella?
I hate the word Cinderella before a bracket comes out.
Okay. Would you prefer we called it like Snow White or
just mid-major teams to know?
Ariel? I don't know. Okay, mid-major teams to know. Drake, I obviously just mentioned, they are 22-2. Ben McCollum in his first year has just, taken the program that was already very good and kept it going. Drake has a chance for an at-large bid. They are in first place in the Missouri Valley. They have had a tremendous year. Bennett Sturts has been one of the more impressive players in the country. Bennett Sturts has not played under 36 minutes against a Division I opponent this year.
Bennett Sturts might be on my All-American ballot.
That would be awesome. And I wouldn't blame you for it. He's been sensational. Would you call VCU a Cinderella at this point?
No.
I'd love VCU so much.
An A10 team is not a Cinderella.
Okay, so let's go, Drake.
Let me go. Give me a 2-for-1. UC Irvine and UC.
Yeah, that's where I was going next.
UC San Diego just picked off UC Irvine by 18 points on the road in Irvine. Their best player, Aniwa Tate Jones. Say that 3 times fast. Aniwa Tate Jones.
Aniwa Tate Jones. Aniwa Tate Jones.
One of my favorite players in the country. He is kind of AJ Mitchell like in the Big West as a 6'6" guard that can play make, that can really score inside. Not the best of 3-point shooters, but does a really good job at getting to the line. So. Definitely the closest thing that I've seen to AJ Mitchell in the Big West. If AJ Mitchell, I believe, is on the Oklahoma City Thunder right now, or at least in the G League.
Yeah, he's in the organization for sure.
They just signed him to a multi-year contract. That's good for him. Good for him. He's awesome. He had 22 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists in that game. They have Hayden Gray, who is the nation's leader in steals. They have Tyler McGuy, who is one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. Norden Kapich has been really good this year as well. They're coached by Eric Olin. This is their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament, and they're 20-4. They've lost twice since November 21st. Those 2 losses are to UC Irvine and to UC Riverside. And then on UC Irvine, this is a team that started the season 9-0, and people were talking about them. Hey, what if they can go on a run and go undefeated, because they were projected not to lose any of their games on KenPom. They lost to Oregon State. They lost to Duquesne. They've lost to Riverside and San Diego. But this is one of the best defenses in the country. You have Bent Leishton in the middle, 7-footer. Just great rim deterrent. Justin Hone, Miles Che, and Devin Tillis. 3 guys that can score in different ways. That can really play for them. They lost Andre Henry, one of their best perimeter defenders for the season, but they've made it work anyway. Russell Turner has had plenty of good teams at UC Irvine, although he's only made the NCAA tournament twice. This is a year where he can potentially make it for the 3rd time, but he will have to get past UC San Diego to do it.
Yeah, I want to throw out a team that I was really high on in the preseason. That is Arkansas State. This is a program now under Brian Hodgson, who was, an assistant of Nate Oates for a decent long time. They are tremendously athletic for a Sun Belt team. They are really good defensively. If I had to, complain about something defense, I'd say they foul too much, but they're really good in the half court and just preventing teams from scoring. In general, they have guard play. Taron Todd has been a really good player for them this year, sharing the ball, making plays, scoring. Kobe Julian has had another good year for them. And then how about Joseph Pinion, who has come down from the high major level and made a really good impact as a shooter off the ball for them. I think this team could absolutely make some noise in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, you and I are both huge fans of Brian Hodgson as a head coach.
Give me Yale.
I was saving them for you.
Yeah, Yale's a team that I've seen twice in person. In those 2 games, they've outscored their opponent 100, but by an average score of 92.5 to 65. Sorry, 92 to 65.5. And those were obviously Fairfield's not been great, but Howard is a good team. They are 4-2 in the MEAC. They killed both of them. This weekend, they went to Cornell and dropped 103 points. I can use the number. I can use the number of fingers that I have to count how many better shooters there are in college basketball than John Poulikitis. Bezem Bang just had a triple-double, and he was close to a triple-double earlier this year, I believe, if I'm not wrong. But Bezem Bang has been one of the best point guards in mid-major basketball for a while now, one of the best defenders in mid-major basketball. And then you lose Danny Wolf, you lose Matt Nolan, you lose August Mahoney from a team that was 90th in KenPom last year, won a tournament game against Auburn, and yet you go up 30 spots in KenPom. You're 14-6, you're 7-0 in the Ivy League. They've won 8 in a row. They do have that ugly loss to Delaware on their resume I forgot I was at that game too, when they allowed 100 points. So I've seen them play 3 times. Twice they dominated the opponent. Do have that ugly loss to Delaware. Do have that interesting loss to UIC and UTEP. But they played Purdue pretty close at Mackey Arena. They played Minnesota pretty close on the road. Get this team in a neutral environment, get them hitting shots, and I think they can beat just about anybody that's going to be on that 5 line.
Listen, I don't know anyone that doesn't know about McNeese at this point, and I don't know if they're any different than they were a year ago, but you have to at least mention them. I also will say that I think McNeese got a pretty brutal draw last year playing a team like Gonzaga. Will Wade's got another really good squad. Record's not quite as good as last year, but that's because the schedule's been harder. They've played more good teams. They played Alabama, they played Miss State, they played Santa Clara, they played Liberty. They have pretty much ran through the conference outside of the one loss to Nichols, who is a solid team themselves. But this is another team that is built on being way more athletic than the opponents. I don't know if that will hold up in the NCAA tournament, but maybe, they fall into a game against St. Mary's or something like that. And it works out in their favor the same way it did for Grand Canyon last year. McNeese is obviously very well coached. They're not as good of a shooting team as they were last year, but they forced a ton of turnovers. And, obviously I mentioned how athletic they are. So hopefully for McNeese, the tournament fortune goes a little better this time around.
I'm going to go Akron. I'm not sure what a great matchup for them in the NCAA tournament is.
Longest winning streak in the country.
But yeah, they've won 11 in a row. Longest win streak in the country. Just beat a South Alabama team that is kind of in free fall right now. 18-5, 10-0 in the MAC. Good offense. Shoot a lot of threes.
Throw out High Point. Team that's really built on offense, but a team and another team that was kind of hyped up in the preseason as a mid-major that could be a force. They're 21-5, 9-2 in the league. They have a couple of guards in Kezigifa, Demorian Williams, as well as Kamani Hamilton, who have had really good years, and then Jocelyn Bodo, one of the best rebounders in the entire country, and as well as
for me, whenever I turn on a High Point game, it's Abdoulaye Thiam, it's Chase Johnston, it's Trey Benham, it's those guys making big plays, and those are not the Kezagifas, the Kamani Hamiltons of the team, but they're deep. They are really deep in terms of guards that can make a play.
Anyone else?
Not really. I guess one other storyline that we kind of didn't get to that a lot of college basketball fans have been focused on for a good portion of the year is the one going on in Green Bay.
I perked up at that.
Jonathan, would you like to go?
Yeah, I mean, to paraphrase what you said earlier this year for the website, it's a disgrace. I mean, he was
an insult to all of the hard-working coaches who deserve a shot and will never get one. And Doug Gottlieb can step in with no full-time coaching experience and be a radio host and basketball coach at the same time. Athletic director Josh Moon should be ashamed, and Green Bay is predictably 2-23. Well, Doug Gottlieb will tell you that is because his best player, Anthony Roy, who was the nation's leading scorer, got hurt and has missed the rest of the season since December. You'd think they would be able to win at least one conference game without him. They are 0-14. Doug Gottlieb was on Super Bowl Radio Row this week in New Orleans. He missed a practice. His team lost by 15 on the road at the number 2 team in the league. He missed a practice before a game against the number 2 team in his league, Jonathan, because he needed to go do a radio show.
Yeah, he also coached 2 weeks ago last week, against an assistant coach for Oakland because Greg Campy was suspended. Now, obviously, that assistant coach has been under Campy for a long time and is a good coach himself. But the point being, lost by 14. And why doesn't that surprise me? Because every single assistant coach in the country pretty much has more qualifications than Doug Gottlieb to be a head coach.
Any other storylines that we want to get into?
Mississippi Valley State, who is easily by far like the worst team in the country,
has an awesome
the most amazing Twitter that you've ever seen. In your
Is that where you were going with that?
Like I just thought of it because I was at the bottom of KenPom looking for Green Bay, and I saw them, and I'm like, oh yeah, their Twitter is awesome.
They are the worst defense in the country and the worst offense in the country. They got a win last week against Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Their net rating, who is the second worst team in the country, I should add.
And yet we're still 13. How big of a favorite were they in that game? They were 12-point favorites in that game against.
Yeah, Miss Valley State is negative 39.79 in their net rating. Arkansas Pine Bluff, who's the second worst team, is negative 26.78.
Mississippi Valley State.
Meanwhile, Ethan Bach's Maryland Eastern Shore team is negative 22.74.
Mississippi Valley State would be a 22-point underdog on a neutral floor against Doug Gottlieb's Green Bay team. I still think Doug Gottlieb would find a way to lose that game.
Is net rating per 100 possessions?
Yes.
Okay, so it's probably closer to like 18 then?
Yeah, 18. I don't know why I look at it as the way
it's not exact. It just gives you a good estimate.
Yeah.
Alabama games are probably pretty close to exact.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan. You want to take us home?
Yeah, let's do it. If you came to hear about Tyler Self, where he works, you came to the right place. If you came because you are done watching football with the Super Bowl being over and are into college basketball now, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This is season 5, episode 61 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. We'll see you next time.